The Trump administration's travel ban has its day in court while there are new strains in the relationship between the United States and Iran. Hello, I'm Anand Naidu in Washington, D.C., and this is The Heat. Federal judges hear oral arguments for and against the travel ban today in what's becoming an uphill legal challenge facing U.S. President Donald Trump. Meanwhile, the Trump administration levied sanctions against Iran for a ballistic missile test, and relations with Mexico remain strained over a pending border wall. To recap recent events in Trump's presidency, CGTN's Roy Ruttenberg joins us now from the White House. And Roy, one of the more controversial of President Trump's executive actions was the travel ban against 7 predominantly Muslim nations. Where does that stand right now?
Yeah, and that hearing in California is expected to begin in the next few minutes. Again, Donald Trump became president on Friday, January 20th. The following Friday, he signed that executive order, which had several parts. One of it, basically, we saw people at the airport detained, some deported. We saw lots of court orders against that and people being released. The second part had to do with a 90-day ban on people coming into the U.S. from those 7 Muslim-majority countries, people who already held visas and the issuance of new visas. And then a third part was the suspension for 120 days of the U.S. refugee resettlement program, and I should note a permanent ban on refugees from Syria, and that's what's being challenged. Last Friday, 3 Fridays in a row, we've had some action. A judge in Seattle responding to a case in the state of Washington basically blocked that ban from being imposed, setting the precedence for what is now an appellate court to decide. Now, he was a judge appointed by George Bush, and we saw Donald Trump respond saying he is a so-called judge, language that the judicial community is not looking very favorably upon. Now, here in California, a very liberal city, in San Francisco, we have 3 judges, 2 appointed by Obama, 1 appointed by Bush, and what they'll be basically listening for is whether that Seattle court even had the jurisdiction to block that ban. This is expected to take place for about an hour. It's a hearing only, a phone call hearing, and if that court decides that there was no jurisdiction, then we could actually see this being litigated further, and even according to the Trump administration, taken all the way to the Supreme Court.
Roy, the White House also put Iran on notice and, in fact, levied new sanctions on that country after it completed a ballistic missile test. What's the situation between those 2 countries? Are relations going to escalate even further?
And, you know, they did so in a very ordinary way. We had that on-notice terminology coming from Michael Flynn, the National Security Advisor. Then we heard Nikki Haley, I should say, the new U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, taking some really tough language there. We heard White House officials saying that the point of this was to basically get Iran's attention. The U.S. during the Obama administration said that Iran had already violated what's called UN Resolution 2231, namely by test-firing missiles in 2015 and in 2016 that had nuclear warhead capabilities, payload capabilities. Iran is denying that and says that this test that just happened had no such capabilities and therefore was not in violation of that resolution. Still, the U.S. imposed sanctions, which are similar to what was happening during the Obama administration, incremental sanctions, this time targeting 13 individuals and 12 companies, including, we should note, one a Chinese state-owned firm that's doing business with the Iranians. And Iran has responded saying that it, too, will put in place its own actions blocking U.S. businessmen from doing business in Iran. This is the latest escalation, if you will, in that tit-for-tat between the 2 countries. And, of course, that's not going away anytime soon. Anand?
Okay, thanks, Roy. That's CGTN's Roy Ruttenberg reporting from the White House.